Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over the chart, let's go over Tesla, the market itself, and see what has happened so far for this week and what we can expect for a pretty eventful next week, mainly because, of course, on Wednesday, we have Tesla's earnings, which, you know, if there's something that can definitely move Tesla specifically, I think we all know and I can agree that it's probably earnings, right? But all that being said, as usual, if you guys enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. It does help a lot, ladies and gentlemen. I do appreciate that. And of course, as usual, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Make your own decisions, do your own research. But moving into it, the market closed literally just now. Tesla looking like it's going to be down about 0.5%, 0.5%, ending at pretty much 185 on the dot. So compared to the market, Tesla pretty much in line, you know, as we kind of discussed yesterday. I don't expect anything too wild, honestly, for now, at least today, right? I do think that at the very least on earnings, but there is a pretty decent chance that even a move into earnings, whether it's up or down, is a possibility. But regardless, as we've talked about before, a pretty massive move is going to happen. Now, the first thing I do want to start off with, because of course it is the final day of the week, is going to be the weekly candle. Let's talk about the weekly candle. Let's see what we can dissect from this and kind of figure out what we're overall seeing, because the weekly candle, of course, or the candles rather, give us a better time frame or a better look into a longer time frame, and any patterns, any technical things, I guess, if that you see on a longer time frame, especially something like the weekly, are usually much more powerful, right? They have a much stronger chance of playing, or higher chance of playing out, and they're usually stronger patterns in general. But with that being said, let's take a look at the weekly. So as you can see, we are finding some pretty significant resistance around this, kind of 210-ish level, right? All the way up here, anywhere between like 207 to 210. You can see that we've come up there once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, arguably 7, maybe not this one, like about 6-ish, 5 to 7 candles. You can see, depending if you want to count these two or not, it maybe didn't go up high enough, right? But regardless, a fair amount of time, or times rather, and you can see how every single time there is massive selling orders and pressure really coming through. The only one that didn't have that was this candle right here 2 weeks ago, right? And it's a pretty bullish looking candle, obviously, but usually these candles are only bullish in a downtrend. Like if you see this kind of candle, for instance, like right here, that's bullish. That's bullish, right? These two right here, down here in a downtrend, bullish. Unfortunately, this happened in an uptrend. So to me, some people actually view it still as a bearish candle if you have this kind of candle in an uptrend, which is where we got it, right? So that's why we're seeing this little bit of a downtrend play out. But nonetheless, you can definitely make a pretty massive argument that there is just way too much resistance up here and we just can't seem to break it. We tried it up here, we came back again, tried it again, just really couldn't do it. Now, what we potentially are seeing, however, is, I want to remove this actually. With that like that, right? And now we're potentially seeing is, there is a chance for this inverted head and shoulders, or inverted head and shoulders, which is a bullish pattern, to potentially play out, which is going to be something like this. So there's, a chance that we definitely, at the very least, come down to about 167. Now, if this holds, this pattern is still intact. Now, if it does come down to my overall price target that we talked about before, which of course is going to be around that 150-ish level, give or take, that would actually put this candle right, or the right head somewhere down here, which, in my opinion, still a valid pattern, right? The two, like the head, the two shoulders, the left and the right shoulder, don't have to be exactly in line. The only thing, at least from what I've noticed from my experience, that in my opinion would invalidate this particular bullish pattern, being the inverted head and shoulders, is if one of the shoulders enters the region of the head, which is right here. So in my opinion, anything really below like 125 to 120, anything below that or entering that territory would be invalidation. In theory, it can even go as low as 136, and I personally would still argue it's in play. I would still argue that it's definitely a little more sus, and it's less convincing, but I would argue it's still in play. But the more likely target, if 160-ish or whatever doesn't hold, and we come down to around that 145, which is that gap fill, that Fibonacci retracement we talked about, the 618. I personally view this as, it's still, of course, holding and still being a bullish pattern. But that is, of course, something we'll see. And I think earnings will definitely most likely give us a pretty good idea as to whether or not that target is going to be hit. So that's something to consider. But all in all, ladies and gentlemen, as we talked about yesterday, not a whole lot, of movement is to be expected. And that's essentially what we're seeing right now, just straight sideways action, only down 0.5%, really not doing a whole lot. This gap arguably has been filled right here. right? This gap has been filled arguably right here as well. So we're not really leaving too many gaps on the shorter time frame. There are, of course, gaps on the longer time frame, right? For instance, we have this massive one down here as an example, right? You can definitely make the argument that this one down here at 174 hasn't been filled yet, right? You know, you can make arguments that I think there was one up here somewhere. I can't really recall. I don't want to spend too much time looking for it. I know there's more, like some way up here, like for instance up here at 2065, right? You know, there's definitely gaps there, but in the shorter time frame, all these gaps here that we've had on the gap up and downs of, you know, market day opens have been filled. So we're just going sideways, and it seems like Tesla is either waiting for earnings or there potentially will be a massive run up during earnings, right? So let's remove this for now because I don't care too much about that anymore. But you know, all in all, we are looking just, you know, moving sideways, right? So let's take a look. So if we were to draw something like this, you can see we are kind of bouncing around this general territory. So if this starts to fall and we start breaking under here, that's most likely going to make us move to the downside. And this is where this something like this gets a little more confusing, right? Do you draw like this? Right, then, you know, you can argue that we broke out, or do you draw something like this because we technically never really closed a candle above this area, and it's something like this. I would say this is a little bit more valid, right? To me, this could be like a false breakout, right? It was off of a gap up in the morning, which, you know, tend to kind of be abnormalities, if you will. But, you know, we never really truly closed a, you know, real substantial candles in this time frame, and it's also on a longer time frame. If you do it on 30-minute, for instance, or even the 1 hour, it becomes a lot more obvious as to what I mean, how we never really closed a candle above that. So you can definitely make an argument that something like this is what we're in right now. This, to me, looks more bearish than bullish because this can easily be argued as a bit of a bull flag or bear flag or bear pennant, whatever, same thing, honestly. But yeah, so, you know, it looks more bearish than bullish for sure, because again, this looks essentially like a bear flag, bear pennant, right? And as long as, you know, it pretty much breaks down under this bottom line right here, which at the moment, pretty much Monday, I think, actually there's a decent chance this could play out Monday, if not most likely at the latest Tuesday. If it falls under, let's just say, to make it simple, like 182, 183, something like that, that's really where this starts to potentially fall apart and be in favor for the bears. However, on the flip side, if we can get above, I would argue for sure, like 180, 186, if we can get above 186 and start holding and closing candles, like on the 1 hour, especially above 186, which is also above, you know, as you can see, all of this, let's remove the lines for now, right? All this resistance right here, you can see that we're constantly getting rejected right here, right? So if we can start closing candles above that, phenomenal. And on top of that, that will also be a breakout from this little, you know, pennant, if you will, bear pennant that we're finding ourselves in, to the north side, which is what the bulls want to see. So that's kind of the main thing I'll be personally looking at. So this right here, to me, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely important, and I'll be very closely watching this as we move forward. Again, I personally think there's a higher likelihood that it falls to the downside than to the upside, but as usual, keep this in mind. This is very important if we have a run up. So let's just say maybe Monday or Tuesday, or even you know, Wednesday throughout the day itself, any one of those 3 days. But essentially, if we run into earnings, if Tesla starts skyrocketing into earnings, that to me is bearish. However, on the flip side, if Tesla starts plummeting into earnings, I personally view that more bullish, right? So that's kind of, you know, you want to have that kind of inverted mentality, right? So that's kind of also one thing I'll be also paying attention to, right? A rally into earnings, bearish, be careful, most likely a bull trap, and vice versa. Again, nothing is guaranteed, but in my opinion, that is a much likely, more likely of a probability, right? So just keep those things in mind, ladies and gentlemen. But other than that, a sideways day, just pretty much decaying options right now if you have any bought options, which is why I personally said, I think a few days ago, I wouldn't recommend buying options, but that is what I am seeing right now. And I do think that Monday, this has a decent chance of playing out, and we'll see where it actually takes us. If it goes to the downside, essentially what you do is you take the flag, the pole, or whatever you want to call this right here, you move it to where it breaks down, and that's kind of where it takes us. So this potentially actually has the possibility of bringing us down to around this 150-ish level, which is pretty much the level I've been talking about. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, moving along, I do want to very quickly touch on SPY and QQQ because those, of course, influence Tesla, and you can see a pretty bearish looking candle. So we did talk about how SPY has a chance to move up to around that 415, 416 level. That's exactly where it went to. I didn't short it. I'm actually kind of sad. I definitely should have. It's still a decent spot to short nonetheless, but it's not looking exceptionally bearish yet. However, this candle right here is definitely more bearish than bullish because, of course, I've talked about this before. If the candle is extremely narrow, like the wicks, which is like the empty part, like literally just the line, are very long, and in the center, it's an extremely thin candle, right? AKA like the open and the close are extremely tight and close to each other, which is more or less what this is right here. That's bearish, or relative to, of course. In this case, it's bearish because it's usually a sign of a reversal. In this case, we're in an uptrend. Having a candle like this usually means it's time for reversal. Pretty high likelihood. And of course, since we are in an uptrend, the reverse, aka the opposite, naturally would be a move to the downside, right? So that's pretty bearish right there. On top of that, we also have QQQ still just really finding an issue, trying to break above while still setting up that bearish divergence where, you know, as QQQ went higher, the R side absolutely did not follow suit. So keep that in mind as well. The VIX is just something else. So this thing is just absolute just weakness after weakness after weakness. But again, like I said, if this thing keeps falling lower, man, the lower this gets, the scarier, in my opinion, it becomes to be a bull. I'm just saying. This doesn't mean it has to happen right away, but usually when the VIX, especially, and we talked about this way back when it was still up here, if it falls into the mid-teens, it tends to have pretty violent bounces from there. So just keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. I do think a pretty violent bounce is on its way. I might actually close out like half my cash secured puts on Monday. Hopefully that, you know, I have time for that. I kind of want that weekend decay to, you know, decay those cash secured puts I have sold a while ago that I'm still holding. I did close one of them out, but I do want those to kind of decay over the weekend, and then Monday I most likely will try to close out like probably half of them, honestly. But yeah, that's kind of the main thing I'm seeing right now. So let me know what you guys think down below. Of course, TSLQ final look is going to be pretty, you know, similar for what we saw yesterday. Also just really not doing a whole lot, still getting rejected by this overall trend line. But essentially, once this breaks out, this is another easy way to look at it. If you ever see this TSLQ break out of this blue line right here, oops, sorry, this one right here, if you ever see it come out to the top side, that's not good for Tesla. Let's just say that, right? So keep that in mind. That's another easy way to kind of determine what Tesla itself will do. If the chart looks a little confusing to you, you can always look at this, and if this looks bearish, Tesla looks bullish, and vice versa. So another way to kind of take a look at it as well and get a, you know, potentially better, more, you know, perspective, more insight into what TSLA might do and things like that. But all that being said and done, thank you all so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll see you on Monday. Peace.